with your character this season, there's going to be a dual dynamic with your character. One, you're helping F and Nora with the case, but you're also having ulterior motives outside of your control. What conflicts did you have to draw from to kind of play those two sides of one person? Because it's very emotional what
Jim
what he
Kent,
goes through.
it is. It's very it's traumatic. It's traumatic for the audience. People coming up to me all day at Comic-Con saying, "Oh, dude, what are you doing?" But they love it. But then they all, because it's me and the characters I played that people enjoy from the past are mostly likable characters. So it's hard to experience a person who's likable making a bad choice. He's clearly a morally compromised character, but he has his reasons. In the coming episodes, whether it's, the question will become, is it forgivable? Can F and Nora, can Corey's character, can the audience forgive Jim for what he's done, or has Jim, really gone to the dark side, so to speak, had such a strong affiliation with this organization that it's kind of irredeemable? And I think, looking at the scene in the pilot where he lets the coffin, the master, go from the cargo hold across the bridge, which is basically unleashing a plague on civilization, he doesn't seem happy about it. He seems reluctant, but that's kind of cheesy. It's not great. It's like, if you know it's the wrong thing, don't do it. But Jim does it, and maybe he has a reason, and maybe he doesn't.
But I don't think Jim really knew exactly what he was unleashing. I think he had no real concept of this magnitude of vampirism strain that he was releasing. So
yeah, you've got the magnitude of scale. I thought I was stealing a fork. I didn't realize I was toppling a government. But and I'm a father of 3 daughters, and you try and instill certain values, and telling the truth isn't always the best thing. Sometimes there's greater wisdom in fudging something. If you're helping somebody's safety, if you're there's just times, and that's not what we normally teach. That's not what we publicly teach. We teach the truth above all else, because that's how society organizes itself. That's why we have laws. But as a father, when you're talking about helping your children survive in the world, but then it gets a little hard. It gets hard that you sort of go, well, when you've made a compromise, when you've done the wrong thing, try and do the right thing. If you've done the wrong thing, it's hard to recover from it. And Jim learns that lesson, and it has an effect on other people.
What was your reaction when you first read the pilot episode, the script? Also being a parent as well, there's such a monstrous story, and how did you feel when you read it?
Well, you have to compartmentalize. If it's a First Amendment issue, right? Like, you don't want your kids to be exposed to awful things, and we should protect our kids from awful things. But then you get somebody like Guillermo who wraps up awful things in such an interesting way, and where you're actually learning from them. You can actually, you're having a part of your fears expunged. So I read I listened to Ron Perlman's audiobook of The Strain when I was riding my bicycle late at night, midnight, through the streets. I put my kids to sleep, and then I'd ride the bike. And it was really a creepy, kind of dangerous way to experience it.
Did you crash at any point?
almost a couple of times, but it was Ron Perlman's voice is so good, but it was so good, but the script, it was almost beside the point to me, because Guillermo had described what he wanted the character to be, and I had experienced the book, so I actually have a little bit of a hard time keeping certain things clear. To me, I'm sort of spatial almost. I mean, I have an English and history degree from UCLA with honors, so I know how to read. But you'd almost think I don't, because I go to the stage and I'll go to where the effects bus is and look at all the makeup effects, and I'll see things and I'll go, oh, that's cool. Not putting together, that's what that character was I read in the story. It's almost a new discovery every single time, and it's a little inconvenient at times for me. But it also, I think there maybe is something good in performance about a freshness that can happen too. So as a professional, you have to guide both things. But the story was like, I knew it. I already knew it. It was great.
Do you think that the characters kind of continue to be corrupted in terms of being your interests and feelings for because people associate you with good guys using his character for that?
Well, I think the writing's on the wall for Jim. If you sort of if you TiVoed that scene in the pilot and you played it backwards and forwards a couple of times, you see the willingness to be morally compromised. You see regret. You see fear. You know, he definitely, and you also see a kind of authority. Like, even though he's a support guy, he can tell police officers where to go stand, and he has some juice. He has some, he's got some authority, and so I don't know. The question, like I said, the question is, like, can he be forgiven? He's already done the bad thing. This thing that he's done, whether he knew it completely or not, cannot be undone. You can forgive someone. You can atone for your sins. There can be redemption. But, you know, if he wouldn't have let the van through, you wonder what those guys were very wealthy and very slick, and they would have figured something out, but maybe not in enough time. Maybe the old man would have got, that's a cool thing about certain dramas is you just are chasing behind him, you just miss it. You can ask a moral question and not really have an answer to it, because it's too late. But I think, I'm me, and they like to play with me. So it'll be, they like to play with the idea of me. Guillermo has this little snickering look because he loved Lord of the Rings and he loved Samwise Gamgee, and now he loves that he's having Samwise Gamgee unleash a plague.
But if Jim knows at least on some level what he's doing, why do you think he was so insistent on trying to get F to listen to Abraham and maybe consider the magnitude of this talking that he probably...
Well, you're inside of it. That question means that you really understand what you're watching. Jim, I think it's pretty clear that he didn't know what it was. He knew that he was a part of something bad, but you'll discover in the coming episodes like what he really knew and what he didn't know and what he thought and what he tried. It's like how much you try and cover up what you know. Who's he going to be? But I really do like that idea that he pulls a guy out of a crowd and wants to draw. That I say at one point, it goes by so fast, but he goes Jim, and I go F, and I'm not. My character will stand up for something that he thinks is right, and then the old man sort of, it's an expression, but he kind of screws the pooch, and he kind of does, he doesn't say to F what he had said to me that was so compelling at first, and then he does. So, but that impulse of Jim's to actually solve the problem, to fix it, I think is emblematic of the fact that as a member of the Centers for Disease Control, you want to help people. And I don't think he's there as a ruse. I think it's pretty clear that he wants to do a good job. He just also has some other reason for doing the wrong thing.